What's going on, and welcome back to D+Pad Life. And today I want to discuss Resident Evil 2, the original PlayStation 1 classic, probably the most beloved entry in the entire Resident Evil series. Overall, I'd say people seem to really love Resident Evil 2, and I just think that it sold so well, and so a lot of people got exposed to this one more so even than the original. And I think that, it's got its charm, right? It does a lot that the original did not. Acting's a little bit better. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a better soundtrack, but it certainly has a more robust soundtrack, and its soundtrack is very iconic and captures a whole new vibe. I think starting in Raccoon City and progressing beyond Raccoon City really breathes a lot of life into this game. And then you've got iconic leads like Leon and Claire and the quest they go on. So we're going to dig all into that, but let me just say this. If you're a Resident Evil fan, if you love Resident Evil, be sure you subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to be discussing every entry in this series, piece by piece. That includes the originals and their remakes, and we're going to go through all of them within the next few weeks here. So if you enjoy Resident Evil content, be sure you subscribe. So, all right, let's jump into it. Last video I covered Resident Evil 1. I kind of went over what I liked, what I disliked, told some stories. I think I'll go ahead and first start with the story time, just like in the last one. So Resident Evil 2, I first got exposed to it as a demo disc in Resident Evil Director's Cut. I had mentioned that the second PlayStation game I had ever played was Resident Evil Director's Cut, and that came with the demo to Resident Evil 2. And so I was able to experience this game really early on in my time with the PlayStation 1. And that demo certainly ended up being a little different than the final release, but it definitely gave me a super solid taste of what to anticipate and what to expect from this game. I really enjoyed it. And then one of my neighbors growing up, he got this game and invited me over to check it out. Now, he was kind of a little like brat as a kid, and he wouldn't exactly let me have my fair turn with the game. He expected me to sit and watch him play pretty much all the time. I had to wait until he got efficiently bored with the game before I could finally get some turns. And then even then, he'd want us to take turns. He'd want to pass the controller back and forth. So I didn't exactly get my own extended period of time with the game back in that circumstance, but I got enough to realize wow, Capcom has done it twice. They struck gold. Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 are amazing games. Super recommend these versions of the games. I think a lot of people in this day and age have most of their experience with the remakes, right? But if you've never played Resident Evil 2 Classic, you've got to. It is fantastic. It's extremely good. I genuinely can't recommend it any more than I already am. I think that what you're seeing here is what happens when, sorry, there might have been a slight cut there. What happens when a company has its eye on the prize, has its eye on the ball, and really is focused on presenting a quality product. I think that Resident Evil 2, I know when it first started development, there was a rough patch. They had to scrap it a couple of times. They weren't exactly pleased with how it was turning out. And I've always been interested in that version, and thankfully in this day and age, you can get your hands on a version of that version called Resident Evil 1.5. I don't think it's complete or anything, but modders have gone through the trouble of doing a lot of work to it to make it an actual playable game to a degree. So I haven't checked that out yet. I'm definitely going to. But then they got to where they made this version, and it is just, God, it's so good. The soundtrack is crazy memorable. There were some improvements to the gameplay in the sense that, I think enemy design and mechanically just the way, enemies move and maneuver and how it complements your own mechanics, and, kind of the way that each character really gets a unique set of arsenal, to the point where even their pistols perform differently. I thought they just made it a slightly sharper design mechanically. The quest you go on in this game is super interesting. Again, just like the first one, it's a very fascinating story. It certainly pulls you in. I think that this whole idea of the fact that like now it has spread from the mansion to the entire city is just really draws you in. It's like, holy cow, man, I gotta see where this is going and how this ends. And certainly it ends with a bang, right? Pun intended. But then you got these leads, Leon and Claire, and they were so interesting, just like Chris and Jill, except different, right? Because Chris and Jill are like trained officers, not necessarily for the situation they were in, but they certainly are experienced professionals, right? But then with Leon, he's a rookie cop, and Claire is just a civilian. Now, she is the younger sibling to Chris, right? As we, get to learn more about and be exposed to in Code Veronica. But in Resident Evil 2, it's just like, it's really the start of her journey, right? So I think that one of the things I appreciate the most about Resident Evil 2 is the fact that they made each character's scenario complement one another. So if you played as Leon, the following playthrough when you play as Claire, a lot, not everything, but a ton of what she is doing is counter to what Leon is doing. So you'll have to enter the police station from a different angle. You'll navigate the police station differently. Enemies are located differently. Items are located differently. You go to areas of the police station that Leon did not go. You actually, in her B scenario, get to go to places that Leon exposes for you. And vice versa. If you play as Claire first and then follow it up with the Leon playthrough, same difference. So, or same thing, but just different. Like Leon can then go to places that he couldn't go, but Claire went to. I thought that was a very, very cool touch. Plus, it adds two different canonical stories to choose from and 4 scenarios to play in all of them, right? Because 2 scenarios happen in this one and 2 scenarios happen in that one. And so you just get so many opportunities to replay the game. There's so much replay value to this. I think Resident Evil 1's replay value really came from how you would navigate and go through things. And sometimes some characters would live and some characters would die, and that would affect the way the ending plays out. In Resident Evil 2, there aren't multiple endings in the sense that Leon A has multiple endings. There's only one ending, and you can't necessarily affect who lives or who dies. But there are 4 different scenarios you can experience. So you can see 2 different types of Leon stories and 2 different types of Claire stories. And I think that is the biggest strength of Resident Evil 2. The fact that it adds so much canonical replay value and so much interesting story to take part in and to enjoy. I'll give you an example. Claire A, Leon B. One of the characters, Sherry, in the game gets an embryo implanted in her. That doesn't even happen at all in the B scenario. You don't have to worry about that at all. And so I think that's a really cool way that all plays out. I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that. I could be wrong, but I think I'm correct about what I just said. But either way, what else? Then there's like different doors and there's a door you can go into near the end of the game where if you didn't do certain things in your A scenario to set that door up, then you can't get inside it in your B scenario. Or there's items you find that you can pick up and use, or you could save them for the person in the B scenario. They really thought of fun and inventive ways to help the scenarios complement each other. And then, this was one of the first ones that had a stalker type of enemy in it too. I won't get too much into that. If you played the remake, you definitely know. But that became a bit more of a mainstay for the series after this. Not 100%, but in a way. I mean, it's very scripted for sure, but that's okay. It's just this idea that, like, man, I am getting hunted down by this thing, or at the very least, I don't want to run into that thing again, right? And later on, when I actually got to the point where I got to own the game, I got the DualShock version, and that added even more content. The original had some extra scenarios you could unlock where you play as one of the Umbrella operatives who survived the initial outbreak, and you got to see things through his eyes. It was really tough. And then you could unlock an even tougher version of that same mini game where you play as a giant block of tofu, which was hilarious. But in the DualShock version, they added a mode called EX Battle Mode, which was basically like the very first version of Mercenaries mode for this series. That's really what started that idea of like a quick run mode with a timer and you like earn points by killing enemies. But now that I think about it, that was actually the hunk mode. EX Battle Mode didn't have a timer, I don't think. It was just a matter of seeing if you could get to the end and survive and knock out what you needed to knock out, the objective. And And so they basically combined both of those two modes, now that I think about it, to make the Mercenaries mode we ultimately found in 3. Um, there was a continuation, of the preset camera angles, the pre-rendered backgrounds, and tank controls that the first game had established. And I think to this day, those will be controversial for some players. Those are some challenges for some people out here, trying to overcome that. But I will say it is 100% worth conquering, is 100% worth adapting to. You are going to have a blast of a time with Resident Evil 2. Is there anything else I want to say? What did I not like about the game? I guess all I can say that I don't like is it still doesn't surpass the original for me. That's just a matter of preference, right? I think the journey you go on is great in the second game, but I really enjoyed the intimacy you found and experienced by going through the mansion grounds. And like, you leave the mansion, go to a whole nother place, go through there, and have to revisit the mansion again, just to ultimately get into the sewers and find the lab. This one is a straight linear experience all the way through. You're in the police station, you progress to the basement of it. Next thing you know, you're in the sewers. Next thing you know, you're in the lab. It really hilarious. My cat's calling for me outside the door. It really progresses in a linear fashion, which isn't a knock to the game. That's totally fine, but I just preferred the pacing of the original a little bit more. But it still has the same strengths, man. Lots of fun puzzles, lots of discovery. You've got to have a sharp eye. You've got to look through everything. You got to click on everything, especially your first time through in this game. So Resident Evil 2, man, another really good one. If you are interested in this series at all, I would probably actually say play Resident Evil 2. If I had to recommend a Resident Evil 2 to a new person to the series, this would probably be the one I would recommend, honestly. Resident Evil 1 can be pretty tough, and it's a little archaic, right? It's very old. But Resident Evil 2, I think, made its progression a little more clear. I don't think the puzzles are as complicated or as, I don't like the word confusing, because they're not really confusing in the first game, but maybe just not as difficult. I think it gives you a bit more straightforward puzzles to get through. It's just not nearly as challenging in that way. And I do think the larger arsenal, and there's a lot of ammo, I just think it's maybe a bit more of a user-friendly game. I think it's more friendly for someone who's trying to get into the series. So if you're new to the franchise and you just want to check it out and see if it grips you, Resident Evil 2 would be the one I recommend. But let me know what you guys think below. Where does Resident Evil 2 rank for you guys in your favorites of the series? I have a feeling for a lot of you, it's probably your absolute favorite. I hear it all the time, man. People love Resident Evil 2. And which Resident Evil would you recommend for someone's first one? I'm curious, because, storyline-wise, this is definitely a direct sequel to the first game. But I don't necessarily feel like you have to have experienced that story to appreciate this one's story either, So yeah, let me know down below what you guys think about that. And man, if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please consider subscribing. I'm going to be covering all the Resident Evil games in the entire franchise, the originals and the remakes, as well as I talk about Resident Evil pretty frequently on this channel. But also, yeah, if you enjoyed this discussion today, please leave a like. It goes a long way in supporting the channel, helps us grow, helps us reach a larger audience, and I'm really enjoying chit-chatting with you guys in the comments. But other than that, you guys, I hope to catch you in the next one. We'll be talking about Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I think I got an idea on how to make this video a little bit more interesting. I intended to actually have the games running so they could play through their demo reels and stuff while I was talking, but 2 videos in and I forgot to do that. So we'll start that on this one. The presentation will switch up a little bit, but no big deal, right? Anyways, guys, you take care. I'll see you in the next one, and take it easy.